What's good, everyone? This is Money Max, the resident R&B god over at Craftmaster Productions, where we make elite music with the philosophy that kids use hacks, professionals use tools. Today, I wanted to come here and talk about the most recent UAD release. This came out yesterday, UAD Spark, because I know we're gonna get the question of UAD Spark, is it worth it? Now, for those who don't know, UAD Spark is basically this subscription service where I think it's $10 a month, and for $10 a month, they've given you about 13 or 14 plugins. You've got some compressors, you've got some preamps, you've got some channel strips, some reverbs, delays, effects, and some actual instrument synths as well. Bundled really nicely for the low price of, I think it's $14.99 actually. And the question is gonna come: is UAD Spark worth it? And so I thought I'd take a moment just to answer that question, but the answer isn't as simple as you would think, or it is very simple once you understand a few things. I'm gonna show you those things. Now, the red box. So when you started producing, when you started engineering, when you started making beats, kind of the first little starter pack of kit and gear that you went out and bought was probably a microphone, cheap microphone, some speakers, probably KRKs, probably, or maybe the Yamaha HS7s or HS5s or whatever, and an interface. And more than likely, the interface that you bought was this. And in fact, you know that this is such a widely used consumer interface in that it's a consumer facing product and an entry level consumer facing product because it's on Amazon. Like, you generally do not get your elite audio gear being sold on Amazon. Like, at best, you might get it secondhand on eBay, but Amazon kind of shows you it's almost like a toy. Like, people get these for kids, and like everyone who first starts in music, this is like the most ubiquitous, the most widely seen piece of equipment in any starter studio. In fact, there's a reason why they made it red, is because it's eye catching. Like, any picture that you see of kids in a studio, you're gonna find this little red box in there. And I want you to look at the price point. It's $134.99. It's more or less what you expect to pay for a starter piece of gear. Now, I'm going to show you something real quick. This is a Mercedes AMG G-Wagon. G-Wagon's one of the most popular, most kind of sought after Mercedes models that exists. They have hip hop to thank for that, by the way, but that's a whole different conversation. It's one of the most popular, sought after Mercedes cars that exist. This is one of the cars that people put on their mood boards. It's one of the cars that people drive around, after the club lets out. People drive in circles around the block looking to pick up chips. In this car, it works. And the price point, £182,000 base model. This is a Mercedes A-Class. Price point, £26,540. Now, I want you to ask yourselves, which one of those two cars do you think is keeping the Mercedes-Benz company afloat? This one, the bad boy, or this one? And now, like, some context about the A-Class. My experience with the A-Class anyway is that what you get is... I'm 25, by the way. So what you get is, like, kids will leave university and get their first real job, and it's going to pay them 24 or 26 grand a year. And that's more or less what this costs a year salary. And the first thing they do is, they live at home with mom and dad. And so they want their first, like, proper car to look good in. And of course, everyone wants a Mercedes. It's the Mercedes, Like, if I buy a Mercedes, it's the brand name I'm buying, really. And so they go to a dealership and they go and get a PCP loan or a finance or a lease for £300 a month to ride around in one of these things. And those consumers are keeping the entire Mercedes brand afloat, because then what happens is they drive that for 2-3 years and then they get a pay rise, and now they're earning £28,000 a month. And the first thing they go out and buy when they get their pay rise to £28,000 a month is a C-Class, which is just a bigger one of these. And a lot more people can afford to buy these entry-level vehicles effectively than the people who can afford to buy one of these. In fact, most people will never be able to afford to buy one of these, which is an inconvenient truth, but a truth all the same. No, let's look at let's look at the pinnacle of our music for the 90s, Dr. Dre, right? We all saw the Super Bowl performance. CMP did a really good monologue about how important it was and how big of a deal it was that Dr. Dre did the Super Bowl performance, and all the artists that have come through him, and he had the whole team out there, and how good of a look that was for hip hop and for black music and for our culture. You see this thing that you always see in the background with whenever Dr. Dre is in a studio picture. In fact, on the Super Bowl performance, Dr. Dre had one of these rise up out of the floor. I don't know if you guys saw that. But he had one of these rise up out of the floor. It was all white, and he feigned like he was doing something with the faders and the buttons. Now, this, ladies and gentlemen, is an SSL console. In fact, this is an SSL's E series console, if I'm not mistaken. SSL 4052E was the one that Dr. Dre would have used. It's the one that was in the Death Row Studios. In fact, Dr. Dre tells the story himself. You know, after having all that success with NWA, he can afford to get his own SSL yet. Like, he was kind of on the way, but he couldn't really afford to get his own SSL 4000E console. And he really wanted a 4000E console. And the way Suge Knight finally convinced him to come and join Death Row Records was Suge Knight's Death Row Records had a studio. And in the studio was the 4000E console. Legendary console. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many records were done on a 4000E console. And there's a reason that Dr. Dre, famous rapper, you know, wildly successful group, NWA, been on tour the whole time, couldn't afford to buy one. These came out and they were in the region. They were something between, 150 grand to 200 grand. So they're the G-Wagon. This is the G-Wagon we're talking about. So back to the SSL point. I actually tapped one of the OGs because I'm 25 years old. I wasn't outside. But I tapped a dude who's in his late 50s who was engineering in the 90s and 70s and 80s. And he was telling me that the original SSL consoles were actually close to like $1 million. And that was $1 million before the recessions. That was $1 million, that was $1 million back then, right? So if you adjust for inflation now, you see why Dr. Dre couldn't afford one by himself. So yeah, I thought I'd correct that mistake. This is the most successful, most widely used console of all time. All time, like music history. I'm talking since really the 1920s when a lot of this music technology stuff started to take off. So 100 years ago now. Last 100 years, the most widely used console has been SSL 4000. So you got the SSL 4000, you got the SSL, I think it was the 3000, you got the E console and the G console. And this is what all the plugins are based on, by the way. So you got the Waves SSL-E and the SSL-G. And then they all used to come with a compressor. There was a reason why. And I'd advise like anyone who wants to really look into it to find this article because it's extremely interesting. For someone like me who's an audio nerd, it's very interesting. Chris Lord-Jalgi, who makes all of these Waves plugins, like he's like the big Waves ambassador. And here you have a video of him talking about this exact console. I'm just going to play a little bit of it.
If you could all have a desk, or all have a Duality, or all have a C200, or an AWS, one of their consoles, you realize that when you have the big desk in front of you, you feel empowered to be in control of something. When you have a screen and a mouse and a keyboard, you feel like a telephone operator.
Okay, so that right there is him saying what CMP's been saying a lot of the time. CMP always talks about how he hates using a mouse and keyboard and clicking around with stuff. He likes to have tactile controls and real gear. And this is a legend of the rock industry and a legend of basically the sound of modern music, saying exactly the same thing, having that tactile thing, having a board with real parts, etc., etc. is just so much better than having a computer, and it also sounds better. Like that's something we'll get to in a second. Now some of you might know who this is, Ken Lewis. If you don't know who Ken Lewis is a wildly, wildly, wildly successful engineer, songwriter, producer. You'll probably know the Kanye stuff that he's done. He did Jeremiah Down on Me with 50 Cent. He did Kanye West Power. He was on Yeezus. He was all over Graduation. And what was the first one? College Dropout. He was like a big part of College Dropout. These are some of his credits. 19 Grammys, 57 nominations, 108 platinum and gold records, Billboard number 173. Huge guy. And he, I couldn't find it in this interview, but he will tell you that he learned on an SSL 9000J console. Now, the only people I know that make an SSL 9000J console are Brainworks. But that actually, to me, is the best sounding SSL plugin, as someone who's used a lot of them. And to this day, Ken Lewis, if you see in his house, like look at this. If we zoom in, can we zoom in? That right there, what is that? That's a console. This is in his house. This is where he mixes from home, just like a lot of us. And he has a console. And I'll tell you what console he has, because he actually has, well, you can see it right there because I watch his channel. He actually has a channel where he tells you all the stuff he does and why and how. We'll let that load. But this man, with all these awards, etc., one thing he's always said, or one thing he said recently, was like sometimes artists will hire like a famous and prolific engineer because they like the sound of that engineer, they like the records that he's done for like a label mix, right? So they'll hire them as an indie artist, and because they're paying an indie rate, the engineer will effectively not give them the same thing, because the engineer will mix the label record in a studio with a big console like that, whereas he'll mix an indie record on a laptop at home with headphones. It's like a completely different thing. And like people always say it's the ear, not the gear, but like if it was the ear, not the gear, people wouldn't spend 150 to 200 grand on these consoles. Now, I'll tell you what console this guy has. This guy has an AWS. He actually has an AWS 900 plus. This is like the new model of that. But again, look, 67 grand. You don't afford that if you haven't worked pretty hard on some pretty big records. But it's literally a console. Like it's got I think 28 or 48 channels. It's got if you can see there, it's got the G bus compressor that was one of the features that made the SSL famous. 67 grand. Now again, I'm telling you that this is your Mercedes G-Wagon. And SSL have basically said, right, we make G-Wagons, but the state of the music industry is such that right now no one could afford a G-Wagon. Right now, people don't buy songs, people don't buy albums, people don't go and spend $10.99 on 12 songs. People spend $9.99 on all the songs that exist in the world. And so SSL have made a very, very, very targeted and deliberate pivot to a whole new market. What is this? This is a desktop interface. Remember this that you started out with? Yeah, SSL, big bad SSL. SSL, the king of audio, is now making a competitor for that, because they said, who's making all the money right now? In this era when no one can afford to get their record mixed properly. In this era where, most people that make music are beginners, for better or worse. Oh, it's the people who have £200 to spend. It's people that have $200 to spend. Okay, let's make a product that faces them. And then, of course, you've been there, I've been there. Okay, we get to a point where, right, I understand now that this Focusrite red box, I understand that the sound of this isn't taking me where I want to go. It's time for me to upgrade. It's time for me to get something real. It's time for me to get something big and bad and with Like, now I know what converters are and how they affect the sound of speakers. And I know what a preamp is, and I know how that affects the sound of my microphone. And I know, okay, this is not the wave. Like, I need to get something bigger, badder, better. And so there's a market for that too. This is the new flagship product. What is it? It's the SSL Fusion. Now, this is for the people who are in our sphere, right? This is for the people who, this is for the CMPs. This is for me. This is for your key flows. This is effectively, it parks on your master bus, right? So this is for those of us who have hybrid setups. We work mostly in the DAW. We work in Studio One, we work in Logic, we work in Ableton, but we want our music to have the analog sound because analog is better. And by this point, we're no longer having the debate of digital versus analog. No, we understand that analog is better for some things, digital is better for things like convenience. And so we have hybrid setups, and we want hybrid setups. And so here comes SSL with an appropriately priced little black box that gives us the ability to have the best of both worlds. This is not priced to be aimed at the person that can afford a G-Wagon. The person that can afford a G-Wagon is going to buy a G-Wagon. The person that can afford the big bad console, one of these, the Ken Lewis's, they're going to go out and buy this. They're going to spend the 70 grand on that to have at home, just chilling in the bedroom. The rest of us, we're gonna buy things like this. This has kind of everything you need. Like, it's got a little EQ. It's got your saturation circuit. It's got an EQ. It's got a compressor. It's got a stereo image widener. So that's everything you need to have a cool little mastering chain, right? Effectively, and then you add a limiter to the end of that, and Bob's your uncle. You suddenly have the big studio sound in a bedroom. Or in my case, in a bedroom. In CMP's case, he has like an actual house, and he has a house, and like there's a room dedicated to audio. Similarly, you've got your. This is the one I actually like. I prefer this. This is the Neve version because we know there's the big three or the big four. There's SSL, API, Neve, and to an extent Universal Audio. And so this is the one I've, having used both, I really like this one. But it's the same thing, as a compressor, there is a saturator. I don't think it has an EQ. There's a limiter and a stereo width field thing, right? It's a little more expensive because Neve has always positioned itself as being a better version. Well, Neve was better than SSL, and then SSL came along with solid state stuff that was automated, and they basically took over the market. But like SSL was like the Fruity Loops to Neve's Pro Tools, and so Neve stuff's always gonna be a bit more expensive. Then you have your SSL 6. Again, this is for the prosumer market. So we're consumers, but we're pros. We're professionals at what we do. This effectively gives you 6 channels of a console. So you might not have 70 grand to spend on the G-Wagon of the big console that you can have in your house, but you're gonna have a grand because you have a job or you work with artists and they pay you. And so you can have a mixer that has, the compressor. This is the compressor that has EQs, that has the super analog inputs, and that you want to drive so that you can get that distortion and saturation sound that made the SSL famous. And so for 2 grand now, you can live like someone with a G-Wagon. It's the SSL name. You still have SSL shit. You still have the SSL sound. It might not be the SSL G-Wagon, but it is SSL. Moving on. I'm trying to not drag things too much. I'm not gonna make you read this wall of text, but this is basically Bill Putnam. So this is the guy who this is the guy that started Universal Audio. And just kind of an overview of him. Basically, the way his story is, he was in the military, and when he was in the military, he was an electrical engineer. And off the strength of that, he was making radios and stuff. This was during World War II. He was making radios and audio gear. And then when he left the military, and when the war was over, he went on to create a bunch of equipment for sound. And like he became an engineer, sound engineer, worked with people like Elvis, Van Halen, Quincy Jones, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and off the strength of that, he invented a lot of very cool stuff. Like he invented the first vocal booth. Like he's credited with making the very first vocal booth. To say, you see the way that you record, like when you started out, you were recording your friend in a closet and closing the door. He invented that. This is a UAD 610 preamp. This is one of the ones they give you for free when you buy your Apollo. This is 1176, and this is an LA2A. Forever, for years, decades, the sound of professional vocals has been a microphone recorded into an 1176, followed by an LA2A. All these products are made by Bill Putnam, Universal Audio. And so if you look at the price points again, I mean, you can more or less save, like if you have a job, right? And for between the two, about $8,000, you can have that recording chain. If you want to add the preamp to it, just under $10,000, you can have that premium recording chain. But then they said, okay, most people don't have $10,000 to spend. How can we simulate the SSL with the SSL6? How can we get to that market, the pro audio consumer? In comes Universal Audio, the Apollo. I have an Apollo. CMP has an Apollo. Everyone of note has an Apollo right now. The Apollo is like your entry level good interface. It's like it's like you've just heard what converters are, and you realize you need good converters. But most importantly, the concept of this is right. We're in an era where digititis and being in a computer has made everything too clean and lack vibe and lack energy and lack warmth and lack magic, really. So they said, right, we're gonna come up with an interface that doesn't only give you, good converters and something you can plug a mic into. It actually gives you the sound of all of these preamps. It's an emulation box. That's the point of the Universal Audio Apollo line. It's all about being able to tap into the sound of many vintage pieces of equipment, particularly preamps, and track through them with zero latency. And that is at a price point that makes sense for the professional consumer. Kids living paycheck to paycheck are saving up for these right now because they've gotten really good with their sales funnel, right? And then off the back of that, you buy one of these, right? You buy one of these, and you've spent your £900, or your $1,000 in American money, dollars, if you so prefer. And then you get brought into this world where, wow, there are all these plugins, and all these plugins sound better than any other plugin. Now, I actually got my Apollo years ago. I got it before their sales funnel was good. So like I've had it since all the plugins. There was a point when all of the plugins, it didn't matter what plugin it was, minimum £150, 150 to 250 every single plugin. They didn't really have the sales this way. That's kind of a new thing the last 3 years. Before that, you were just paying the money, right? But look at this stuff. You got preamps. You got Thermionic Culture Vulture. There aren't any Thermionic Culture Vulture plugins right now. Manly Massive Passive. There aren't many other Manly EQ emulations. Fairchild. Waves has a Fairchild, and we'll get onto Waves. Lexicon Reverb. So you have an idea, right? So you get access to these plugins, and these plugins cost more than any other plugin, but it's because the plugins sound better than any other plugins. Now we are onto Waves, and if you are subscribed to the Waves email at all, if you get any of the adverts, you'll know that today you can get basically any Waves plugin that exists for $29.99, right? They cost nothing, absolutely nothing. But I was outside when Waves plugins used to cost what UAD plugins cost. In fact, if you still look closely, it still says $249 crossed out $29.99, because that's what this used to cost. This used to be the plugin. Like there was a time when, as an engineer, you weren't shit if you did not have the SSL channel from Waves, right? And people were paying the $250 entry level to get access to this plugin, the same way people were paying or are paying that kind of money for these UAD plugins. But the people at Waves, they realized something. Damn, like most people don't want to pay 200 or whatever for plugins. In fact, most people can't afford to. We're pricing ourselves out of a huge market right now. The same way that SSL have realized charging 70 bands and up for everything is pricing themselves out of a huge market. Waves realized, okay, at 250, we're charging something that, okay, we can keep the doors open, but we're pricing ourselves out of a market here. And so what did Waves come up with to allow everyone access? They said, okay, we're to charge $29.99. However, it's a Waves update plan. And so you pay your $29.99, but that really gives you the plugin for a year. And then in a year's time, they're going to come along and charge you $29.99 again if you want to continue, if you want to upgrade the plugin. And then if you buy a new plugin, you have no choice but to upgrade all your plugins. And so, $29.99 per year. Ooh, hold up. $29.99 per year. We are in the subscription game now. Let me come back to that. Let me come back to the subscription game. Universal Audio, they've realized, right, not everyone can afford to pay £900 for an interface and then £200 for a plugin. So they've given, for the people that just want to record, that's all they want. All they want to record. They've given us, right, the Vault. What's the Vault? The Vault comes in, you get your preamp, and it's a 610 preamp emulation, and you get a compressor, and you can record a vocal. And you can record a vocal with different flavors and different styles and different feelings for the low price, £204. Who are they competing with, guys? These guys. They're saying for the low price of 200, instead of buying one of these, we'll let you sit in the BMW, right? We'll let you. This right here is the interface for sitting in your uncle's BMW dreaming about when it's going to be your turn. That's what it is. Like, if you buy this at this price, you will be happy. I promise you. Like, if you are a starter, go on ahead and get one of these. You'll be delighted. I also know someone that has the SSL one, the SSL 2 Plus, loves it. Absolutely loves it. Because again, it's brand name, right? You're getting UAD for $200. Now, let's go back to the subscription game. Because what happens with the subscription game? Well, who else is in the subscription game? Who's made a whole ton of money with subscription? Oh, Splice. What is it, $10 a month? $10.99 or something like that? $10.99? $14.99? Every month. Giving you the same samples that everyone else has. Giving you the same sounds that everyone else has. Made a ton of money. Look, you got your Kenny Beats and your influencer marketing campaign. $10.99. And off the back of that, what you can learn is that the subscription game is disgustingly lucrative. These guys make more money than everyone else. Off subscriptions, off of kids, of people that happen to have $10 a month. And then if you want to get like a little bit elite, if you want to go over to the engineering funnel, ooh, Slate Digital. Now a lot of people have problems with Slate Digital because it's subscription only. You can't like there was a point where you couldn't buy the plugins. It was only subscription. That's how lucrative subscriptions are. If you want to buy a Slate Digital plugin, I think they're like $250, just like the UAD plugins. But again, have a look at this. Have a look at all the stuff that you get. Right, you got your LA2A, you've got your distressor, you've got your API EQ, you've got 3 versions of the 1176, SSL EQ, Neve EQ. This is their own stuff. This is that tube preamp that UAD just brought out. Right, and then you've got this, and with this, ooh, it's not just a reverb, it's an impulse response reverb. And if you buy it, they give you the Procrasti impulse responses. And you'll only know what Procrasti is if you are a follower of the Passado show and you are really deep into the engineering world. Ooh, FGX, isn't this the limiter that Mac Dean and Alex Toomey said changed their entire careers? Ooh, all this. Ooh, and you get some synths. Ooh, and you get some guitar effects because they know that a lot of people recording in their homes and in their bedrooms are guitarists. So they let you create any guitar sound that you could possibly imagine. Ooh, are those pedals? Aren't these what like CMP has been stunting on the entirety of YouTube with for the past like 3 years? Pedals? Ooh. Ooh. All this stuff. Ooh. Even more value. Slate Academy, they'll even teach you. They'll even teach you how to use it and get interviews with all these famous people. Is that just Blaze? Oh my god, he's a legend in hip hop. Is that CLA? I was just telling you guys what he means to rock music. All of this. All of this. All of this. Wow. $9.99 a month. Same price as Splice, right? Same price as Splice. Is it not? For the people that can afford $9.99 a month to get all that kind of stuff, and I'll tell you this for free, Slade Digital is one of the most lucrative companies in the music industry. Slade Digital make more than some labels. Like Slade Digital, they're the ones. And they're not the only ones. Plugin Alliance. It's cloth talk now, because if you know about Plugin Alliance, they are high key the best programmers. They make the best plugins. So much so that if you look at some of the UAD plugins and you look at some of the Plugin Alliance plugins, you're like, hold up a second. These are the same plugins. And it's because UAD licensed stuff from these guys. They actually licensed stuff from Brainworks. Ooh. Right. Most people don't even know what that is. This is an LA2A, but really colorful. A whole bunch of guitar stuff. Ooh, if you're a mastering engineer, you know what this is. This is the saturator. This is the saturator that most people use on their master bus when they're mastering stuff. We got AMEC EQs. If you know about AMEC, when Rupert Neve left Neve, he went to make a whole other company called AMEC for a little while. Ooh, we've got 4 different types of SSL console and a Neve console. Ooh, all this stuff. And I'll tell you for free, this stuff sounds better than the Slate Digital stuff. Back CQ, again, master bus. Like, I have a list of like my dream mastering chain. Back CQ's on there. If you have a problem with your high end or your low end, back CQ. Elysia compressor. These are like legendary mastering EQs. And again, guitar stuff, because they know a lot of people are recording through guitar. They want people at home to be able to record at a high level. The Marg EQs, legendary high end, some of the best high end you can get. Who else has an EQ with a band at 40 hertz? Humans can't hear at 40 hertz. However, when you do something with the 40 hertz knob on a Marg EQ, something changes and some magic happens. Ooh, hold up. Did they license this to UAD? Ooh, scary hours. I say all this to say, you can have all these plugins for the low price. For the low price of, where is it? I think it's like $24.99 a month, isn't it? Well, I lost it. But it's $24.99 a month for all those plugins. The subscription gain. Ooh, can they afford to operate like that? Oh, not only can they afford to operate like that, but they can actually make like a ton of money. Like more money than anyone else. Again, Plugin Alliance. And if you see the Plugin Alliance studios, they have all. Oh, here we go. $24.99 per month. If you see their studios, they have all this gear. Like they have the physical versions of all of this. Off subscription. So now we finally come to UAD again. So UAD have gone from making the 1176, $3,000, the LA2A, $5,000, to making, for you and I, just for us, this $1,000. But then for the people who are not as far advanced as us, which is perfectly fine, for the beginners, they made this. And now, for those same beginners, they have made Spark, where for the low price, $9.99 a month, you get, oh look, the main compressors that people use. So when you want to record a vocal, let's say that you have your UAD Vault and you've recorded your vocal through your $200 preamp and it sounds really good already, and you want to have the industry sound mastering vocal chain. Oh, you can run it through your 1176 LA2A as the chain. Oh, that's interesting. And then on your master bus, you can put your API 2500. I didn't even get into how good that compressor is. I have a real one in one of my studios. Oh, look. The Lexicon 224 digital reverb, one of the most widely used reverbs up until this day. Anytime you see a studio console, right, you see one of these perched on it. I didn't even get up a picture. I should have. And then just in case you want some alternate flavors, if you want to go really vintage. Ah, here we go. A very vintage reverb. Again, entry level. And you've got a delay. Their most popular delay for a very good reason. Oh, you've been on the internet and you heard that the sound of tape is what makes everything special? Here you go. Tape plugin. Oh, channel strip. We're not going to give you the SSL, but we'll give you the API, and I'll tell you, the API sounds pretty good. Oh, what's this? The most famous preamp of all time? The most popular preamp of all time? Oh yeah, we're to throw that in too. And then, I don't know anything about these synths, to be honest with you. I've never used the UAD synth. But at least one of them is a Moog, right? Moog. We know about Moog. We know about Moog making it's a $200 synth just to show you that, look, for $200, what we'll give you is going to be better than a Behringer knockoff that you can get at that same price point. Look at our build quality. Oh, and it's going to run natively, so you don't have the entry price of 800, 900, 1000 before you can use this. Damn. Right, how do I choose a plan so I can see how much it costs? So, I'll say all this to say, when you ask me the question of, is UAD Spark worth it? The question I'm going to ask you is, who do you think UAD Spark is for? And once you've answered the question of who is UAD Spark for, the next question you have to ask yourself is, how do you get someone addicted to crack? And the answer to that is you give them a taste.